Now your methods, as we said, with primary research, you can have questionnaires, which is just a list of questions that people can answer. Interviews, where you have one-on-ones with people. Observation is something that you're not able to do, won't be able to do now, but that would, for example, be I'll go to different bookstores. I'll go and first of all ask permission, because you have to get ethical clearance, but then sit close to where the children's section is, and I'll observe what the movement is and what the activity is at that specific spot. So I'll see who are the parents and the kids that are going, what is the demographics of the people that go to the bookstore, what is it, what kind of comments does the kids make, comments do the kids make about books, or what do they like, what don't they like, what is their behavior when they go to the kids section, do they just start pulling out books and look at books, or observing is basically, you're not necessarily, they are participative and non-participative. You don't have to worry about that technicalities, but you're observing something. When I did my research for my M, I went to the Frankfurt Book Fair and I observed. What I observed, I had a list of criteria, because you need to know what you're going to observe. And I wanted to go and observe the South African publishers' stands at this international book fair. And I then looked at how was their stands, decorated, were there any specific South African logos or anything that portrays our culture used, flags, what was the interaction like with foreign publishers and agents coming to their stands, how long did they work, the hours that they worked, etc., etc. So that would be an example of observation. Focus groups is when you get a few people together. So it's not a questionnaire, it's not an interview, it's more people than you would have had in an interview. You get them together in one location, and then you will also have a set of questions, and you ask them questions about your book or about a new idea that you want to test. And then the idea is that they bounce ideas and they discuss and they soundboard, and you basically write down what is happening. So once again, a great environment to test ideas, to get feedback, to really brainstorm, to get in-depth feelings, attitudes, opinions about something, where people can agree or disagree. Unfortunately, in this space and time, we will not be able to do focus groups in the physical sense, but you can still do a focus group as a Zoom meeting or on a Google Meet or on a online kind of group, where you can then ask people questions. You're the moderator and you ask them questions, and then they can give you feedback based on whatever kind of questions you ask them. So questionnaires, once again, it's a set of questions formalized to obtain information. Your objectives is very important. You need to translate your required information into specific questions so that the respondents can answer. Remember, garbage in, garbage out. If you ask stupid questions, you'll get stupid answers. Or if you forget to ask something and you don't get the answer, obviously it's because your wording or your phrasing of the question wasn't correct. So that's also very important. You know already what your objectives are, so you know what you're trying to find out. Therefore, phrase your question so that that answer that you're going to get is actually going to aid you in answering your question. It needs to be user-friendly. I mean, I don't know how many of you guys have also been stopped and then you have to complete a questionnaire and you feel like, oh my word, I don't feel like doing this. But it's quite nice if you do complete it and it's easy and it's not too lengthy. The wording is quite clear. It's not ambiguous. You know exactly what to do. It's structured correctly, and it will basically, you need to encourage the respondent with the way that you structured the questions in order to do it. We always say start with general questions. So that would be more your age, your race, your whatever, all of those things. And then we get into more detail about your book reading and book buying habits. You can't just hand out a questionnaire and say, why don't you read fiction? All right, so you need to start with, give me your name, and you don't always have to include race and that, because then that gets problematic. But if there's a specific age that you need to know, ask them their age and their name. Do they read for leisure or not? And then if they answer yes, then obviously you can carry on with more specific questioning. You also set up your questionnaire in such a way that you minimize response errors. As I said, if your wording or your phrasing of your question is not clear and it's vague or ambiguous, you will not get the right answers because people would misinterpret it. Right. Then, your questionnaire is carrying on. Your question content is important. Obviously, what we've just discussed. Your structure is very important. Also, is it an open kind of ended question or is it a fixed alternative? Fixed alternative is like multiple choice. Yes, no, A and B, I'm not sure, etc. Open-ended is where you ask them a question and they can answer however they want to respond. So it's not just a tick from a drop-down list, but they actually have to write something and give you their opinion or their feelings or, answer it in their own way. Your sequence is also, it ties to structure, but your sequence is also important in the sense that, as I said, don't just go right on the button, all right, like, why don't you read fiction? Or why do you hate dystopian novels? You don't even know that yet. First ask them, what is your name? Do you read for leisure? Tick the kind of fields that you're quite interested in reading. Now tell me more about why you like or dislike that, etc., etc. So the sequence should also be logical. Your visual layout, obviously, as well. If you can make it look nice, not cluttered, but invite someone, help someone to actually want to be part of your study. Right, make it easy for them. Like Google Forms or Docs. Google Forms is great. You can even send the link via WhatsApp to a broadcast group and ask them. They can do it in the ease at their home on their phones. Or polls on Facebook. There are so many things that you guys can do. So yes, please be creative. And then the question wording, very important. It needs to be, you get different kinds of questions, by defining ideas, complex questions, leading questions, vague questions, and generalizations. So the problem with complex questions is that people sometimes just leave it out because they don't actually know, or it's too hard, or maybe you're using definitions or terms that they're not familiar with. So remember, not everyone is as knowledgeable as you in publishing. So some people don't even know what a trade book is. So I kid you not. Some people don't know what nonfiction is. So you need to describe it and say, do you normally read nonfiction? For example, biographies, historical, blah, blah. Give them a question like that, so that it's not too complex or that they don't want to answer the rest of it because it's just too hard. Or vague, Don't make a question too open-ended that it's too vague and people don't really know what you're answering them. Don't provide generalizations and say, men don't read, so why don't you read? It may be that this guy is actually an avid reader and he loves reading mysteries or biographies. So don't just generalize and say, oh yeah, you guys are good with IT, so I presume you like computer books. So don't do generalizations. Leading questions is a tricky one, but that is almost you trying to lead someone to answer in a specific way. So say, for example, you want to test people like the reluctant readers. They don't read because it can be that, they get distracted by other stuff. So then you phrase the question, as a boy of 11 to 13 years old, you don't read because of one of the following reasons. Right, there you're already leading them to say, oh, I already don't read, so now I have to choose an option. Rather phrase the question in a way such as, if you are not keen on reading for leisure, please indicate the most important or the reasons for this behavior or something like that. All right, so that's really important, is the phrasing of your interviews. As we said, it's in depth, and you can sit with someone and you can talk to them, and it's really good to have a nice conversation basically, but you in the back of your head needs to know exactly what it is that you're looking for. Alright, so when we go back to the readership profiles, you need to know at the end of the day, we hope that your primary research will help you formulate a proper readership profile. Because now you've spoken to your sample, which is part of your target audience, you will know the age, the race, the gender, the income, the interest, and the location. You'll know their readership level. Readership level refers to, and I said this in the previous presentation as well, is this for a second year student? Is that an honor student? Is this a high school student or a primary student? Is it a second, third, or fourth language speaker? Or is this a highly educated professor that you are writing a book for or publishing a book for? You know, your readership profiles will tell you by the end of your market research, as I say, the demographics, the readership level, the book buying pattern, their wants and their needs, their price ceiling. So some of them, you can ask them the question, you know, what are you willing to pay for a trade fiction book? But don't just say that. Say, by a best-selling author with a page extent of 250, or then describe your book. So there's no use in just asking someone, how much will you pay for a book? A book can be many things. Be as specific as possible and give them options. Don't just say, will you be able to pay 200 Rand for a book? Because then you'll only get a yes or a no answer, and you don't have an answer to your actual question. Whereas if you put certain things like 50 Rand to 100 Rand, 101 Rand to 150 Rand, etc., then you'll know where about your customer's price ceiling is. All right, so a price ceiling is what is the highest amount that they're willing to pay. And then you will basically determine the size of your readership. Okay. For your assignment specifically,